Hey, lawyers, remember that time during law school when you got that one internship and like one kid in the class got the really cool one and everybody else had to do the crap work? Well, that's part of why I'm super excited to talk to Hayley Leviashvili today about gig law. So, for those of you that don't know her, she's the founder and CEO of Gig Law. It's a platform that provides law firms with the highest quality virtual legal intern level of assistance while allowing law students to gain hands-on experience while in law school. So you get to hire amazing law students across the whole country. They get to have amazing internships, and then who knows what happens? Maybe they come back as lawyers. Maybe they refer you a case. Maybe they do a phenomenal job. Whatever it is, but I think this is going to be a great chat for everybody really trying to build that great firm that gives back, that builds things for long-term success, etc. So Hayley, thank you so much for being with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to be chatting with you today.
And did I get your last name correct?
You got it perfectly. Hit the nail on
All
the head.
right. You know, it's I
It's a
was
question I get a
reading
lot.
How to Win Friends and Influence People, and he was talking about like the
Great book.
name being, the sweetest sound to everybody. And I'm always like, it's like that little thing of trying to nail it. So I'm glad I was able to do
Absolutely.
that. And
No,
thank
I
you
love
for
it.
telling me how to pronounce it beforehand. All
No,
right,
of course. It's a tough last name.
I want to talk about our last episode. Last week we had Chad again, Sinis, another person whose last name I had to nail, on how gaining traction can turn your firm around. So Chad's an EOS implementer, not an integrator, but an EOS implementer that works with law firms across the country on implementing EOS into their firms and the amazing success that comes. So if that's something you're interested in, or just good best business practices, great episode to listen to. But now I want to dive in with Hayley here about gig law. So talk to me about your story. Like, what about your story
Mhm.
became let's put together gig law?
Yeah, so essentially, I grew up in New York and then I went to California for law school, for undergrad. And while I was in California, I was in LA. I fell in love with entertainment and I became obsessed with it. I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer. So, because I'm from New York, I was like, okay, I'll focus my law school search in New York and then come back to LA for, the rest of my life. So, I went to Fordham Law in New York City. It's a fantastic law school. They really have amazing professors, awesome students. But when I went to the Career Center and I told her or told them that I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, but also combine human rights, I really had this vision of like working on Vice documentaries or something like that, or Netflix documentaries. Back then, yeah, I was just obsessed with that type of stuff. And they essentially told me, go to corporate law for 5 years and then you'll be able to do whatever you want. And for me, I knew I didn't want to go to corporate law. I had a lot of family and friends who went to either corporate law or just worked in corporate. And I just wanted a different route for myself. So I just ignored that advice and started reaching out to any entertainment attorney that was willing to speak to me just to hear about what their path was and kind of how to break into entertainment law. And so I was able to land an internship at Warner Brothers after my first summer and I loved it. But then I was like, okay, it's kind of slow. Working in house can be a little slower than working at a firm. So I was like, okay, I'll try working at an entertainment firm, see if I like it a little bit more. So I secured an entertainment firm for my after my second year summer. But then as I was 1 year, second year, and third year, you get to take any classes you like. So I started taking classes in startup law, in human rights, anything. And so I realized, okay, how should I confidently move forward with my law degree if I can't experience other types of law? What do I want to practice? So I just started reaching out the same way that I was reaching out to entertainment attorneys in my first year. I started reaching out to just any attorney in my second year. And I was just networking like crazy, just hearing people's stories about how they progressed through their career, what they like and dislike about their careers. And it was really like bankruptcy attorneys, estate planning attorneys, general business lawyers, like literally anyone. I just wanted to learn about their practice. And there was actually a crypto lawyer back then. It was 2018. I should have invested in Bitcoin back then, but I did not, unfortunately. But so he was a solo practitioner and he said, look, I'm a solo. I don't have the bandwidth to bring someone on full time, but would you want to work for me on a project basis? That way I can get the assistance, the research I need, and you can get kind of experience and also make money while in law school. So I was like, oh my gosh, absolutely. I love that idea. I jumped on it. And so I started helping him out on a project basis. And then I started, when I was talking to other lawyers, continuing that networking journey, I started just offering my services in a similar manner that I was working with that crypto attorney. And a lot of solos and smaller firms, those were mainly the ones who were responding to my cold emails to hop on a phone to pick their brains. They were like, yeah, this is a great idea. I love this. And this was 2019, actually. So before the pandemic, before anyone really was interested in virtual services. And while I was at the entertainment firm and during that summer, I had around 10 clients. So I was juggling both. And that summer was really a turning point for me where I was like, okay, do I want to go down this traditional path, or do I want to, explore this bridge that I'm kind of building between law students gaining experience and solos and small firms getting that virtual assistance? So I forewent the firm offer and I actually just dove right into building this out as a third year student. And a lot of my friends were like, hey, can I start getting project based work? And so when I graduated in May 2020, things were really starting to pick up. And I was like, let me expand this past Fordham into other schools. And that's essentially when it was born. And the pandemic obviously was a terrible, terrible thing and just a lot of lives lost. It was just devastating for the whole world. But it really was the perfect runway for Gig Law to launch a virtual legal intern service. And that's kind of the story of how we came about.
And it cracks me up. So from the 10,000-foot view, your story, I have to imagine career services, 95%, first of all, probably 90% of students never walk into them. But of those who do, they're always like, I don't know what to do. Like, what should I do? Like, and they're, I just want a job that pays a bunch of money. And you walk in, you're like, this is exactly what I want. And they're like, no, I think you need to eat shit at this totally different thing for 5 years, and then you can be happy and do what you want.
Exactly.
If that isn't the perfect summation of law school, I don't know what is from that story.
It truly is. It's so funny that you say that because it's like exactly what so many people experience. And before I went to law school, I had spoken to people about what it would be like, but no one really ever told me like there really is such a path that a lot of law schools want you to take. And granted, I don't want to say this is every law school. Like I know other law schools do give their students more options, but it's a very traditional path that law school embarks you on.
Well, but hey, look, as Mark Twain said, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So you taking that, corporate law job in business law at, whatever six-figure salary is going to come out of it makes the numbers look better for the law school, makes the average, whatever it is, pay. So 100%. It makes sense. All right. So look, I get the benefit of this from the law student side. And honestly, like that's not a ton of our audience. So from the law firm owner side, talk to me about like what are the best needs for them to use gig law? What's the best benefit for, what's the benefit to them? Like walk me through that side of it.
100%. So I would say the number one benefit that we find for our law firms is that they're often in situations where if they bring in a legal intern or even a paralegal, they're coming in every day, they're there 40 hours a week, or even if they're doing partial work, it's 20 hours a week, but they don't always have 20 hours or 40 hours of work to give these people who they're paying. So, or if they're not paying, you don't want someone just sitting there looking bored. So what we really emphasize is that we're here as much as you need us. So it's a project-based work. So if you need 1 week, you need us to work 40, 50 hours, we're good. If you need 2 or 3 hours, just a random research assignment, we're right here for you for that. So it's really an on-demand service. So you don't have to worry about the overhead costs of bringing someone on full-time or part-time. And then another benefit is that we're independent contractors. So that's, I think, law firms' favorite part about us. They don't have to deal with withholding taxes or, any of those for tax purposes. When you're an independent contractor, it's really an easy way to get services. So all they have to do is send us the 1099 at the end of the year, and that's about it. So they love those two reasons too. And then another fantastic reason is that with our law students, they have access to legal research tools that maybe some firms don't have access to. And I don't know if that's something that we should rave about but they really are able to get case law, get any research that they might need. And also, law students are so willing and able to learn, and they love it. There's such an enthusiasm with working with law students that it's contagious. So those are some, I think I've listed four. Those are four really amazing reasons that we've seen over the last 2.5 years of working with these law firms so closely.
And the one that you didn't mention, and I'm curious to see this as you all continue to expand this, I want to know how many people
Mhm.
start out on the project basis and then come back as full lawyers, like at the end of that law school cycle.
Yep. So we've actually had a few students get firm offers from our law
Oh,
firm. So it's like they started
there we
working with
go.
them one on one. Yeah, there it's like it really is amazing because they comes full circle. So that's what we love about it. And like the law firms are obviously so excited because they've groomed this talent and now they're able to work with them full time, which is so exciting. And it's just that they already have a prior relationship that's non-committal. So sometimes firms might be hesitant to hire someone full time because you're going based off of an interview process, resume, grades, and everything. But with us, it's kind of like a trial. You can try working with this person, and then if you want to bring them on full time, you can make them a full time offer. So that's been a really exciting part. And for law students, I know the audience isn't law students based, but it's really nice for them because like they're making the connections that they need to make, and even they're just exploring different parts of the law. So then someone might not have thought that they'd be interested in estate planning, and then they work on a few estate plans. They're like, oh wow, this is awesome, and then they continue working on it, and then they can get a full-time offer there. So it really is a full circle, like hits the whole supply chain of law students to law firms, and that's what's so great about big law.
Well, and I was lucky enough to get a really cool internship my 2L year. It was one of my trial team coaches, they named
Mhm.
me, etc. But then like over that summer, I got
Awesome.
to watch a couple mediations. So then 3L year, I come in, I
That's
take the
amazing.
mediation class. I'm the only one there who's ever
Yeah.
seen one, and it made the class
Yeah.
be so much easier for me to catch up on, knowing like, okay,
Oh
well,
my
we're gonna
gosh.
hear
Yeah.
everybody has their statements. We've got our breakout rooms, like, and just as simple as like
Hmm.
watching the legal side of the process, really was helpful in the
Absolutely.
class.
Oh, 100%. Just as a good example, we actually had a student who was in the first semester was working with the securities law firm and then took securities law the next semester. And he said exactly that. Like it was so great having that actual real world experience. And so law school is amazing for theoretical class, for like the concepts and case law and learning all of that, but actually getting your hands dirty and doing work, that's the beauty of actually learning about the law, because practicing is very different from law school itself.
So, I mean, I've got to think like, look, you get out what you put into it, and I think law students put in 100% of themselves to like all these positions. But from the law firm owner perspective, like, are there in essence, I guess it's delegation, right? Like, are there best
Yeah.
practices for them to delegate the right project to law students, or how they go about delegating?
Yeah. So basically, the way that our app works, when you post an assignment, we have four critical components you have to give us. So one of them is just the title of the assignment and then a description of the assignment. So if you need us to do a research question, tell us what the research question is, and then write it out. And if you want it one, two, three, four different research questions, great. And then we also give you the opportunity to provide us with any background information because obviously that's crucial. But I think when delegating, especially in a concept where it's project-based work, you have to give us a deadline and also a time cap of the amount of work you want us to put into it, or even check-in points. So after 3 hours, check in with us, or on this day, check in with us, even though the due date's a week later. So I think just having the components of a project before delegating it is crucial. Knowing exactly what you want, or if it's like a contract drafting assignment, either you provide us with the template, or if you want us to have the template. The key tip to delegation is constantly checking in and making sure that as you progress throughout the project, it's what the lawyer is looking for. So that's something that we always have. We have check-in points for our assignments, and also just making sure that and then I also call one phase that we have the question asking phase. So for students, let's say they go through the first draft of drafting a contract, I say always reach out to the lawyer, and if you have any questions like for example, should there be transfer restrictions for transferring voting or like membership rights or something in an operating agreement. So if we don't know the answer to that, don't just assume. And so then we have to go in and check in with the law firm. And so law firms, you can't always anticipate missing information. So I think just for us, how we resolve that is just making sure that we're always asking questions, always checking in. And that really is the number one thing about delegation. It's just constant, clear communication. And, not a lot of people, have that type of a level, that skill set, but it's a crucial skill set, especially in law.
I want to dive into that a little bit deeper because I think that's huge, but I do want to touch on my other favorite thing about law school because you mentioned the templates, right? And so in law school, they're like, if you copy this assignment, we're kicking you out. And then you get into the real world, and they're like, if you start this motion from scratch, we're firing you immediately.
Yep.
Like, so
exactly.
I'm sure it's interesting for your law students to get to experience that. But from that standpoint, that that delegation, that communication aspect, like what do you find your law firm owners teaching the students a ton, or do you find them just really sketching out the project in detail, or both?
So it's a combination of both. And so when I first started this out, it was very difficult for me personally to delegate to the students before we had the app and before we had the platform. So because what I expected from them was the level of work that I was providing to my clients, but I'd been doing it for 2 years. So it's very hard for me. It was very hard for me to accept that their level of work, it was going to take a little bit of time for them to get to the level that I was expecting. And then I realized, okay, Gig Law is a platform that provides law firms with legal intern assistants, and they don't want to have to teach the law students what to do. And so what I did, I spent about 3 or 4 months creating what I call the Gig Law Bible. It's like it has everything you would want a legal intern to know, and just it's really general tips that can apply to all research assignments, all contract drafting assignments, all estate plans, and all blog post writing assignments, because those are our 4 main buckets of work. And so this Bible is something that every student, before they're able to accept assignments, they have to go through, they have to understand, they have to make sure that when they do a research assignment, here's the formatting of memos that we like to send to our clients. And so the memo, essentially, it's like an IRAC type of system. So they already have that from law school, but then they really make sure that it's in our formatting so that our law firm clients are happy and they're excited about the work. And then, so that's like the beginning. That's like the investment into the student. And then once they're working with law firm clients, sometimes they are very particular about some things. And so in those instances, they'll hop on a call with the students, say, hey, this is how I want this, this, and this to be done. But the foundation, I think, is all the same. So the law firms don't have to do all that teaching, but it's just, again, with the particulars. So, it's a good mesh of both.
Is that something that the law firm owners have access to as well, that Bible, or that's just for the law students?
No, it's for both. And also there are some law firms that are like, hey, especially with estate planning firms. So for estate planning firms, one of our main offers is that with their estate planning process, we create a separate guidebook for each firm. So it's a step-by-step instruction about how they want their estate plans done. So for example, like in this one estate planning firm in Virginia, for all agent designations in a power of attorney, you have to underline the last name. So that's like a specific step that we include in their specific guidebook. So that is something that we do for law firms. And that's, of course, only the ownership and property of them. And so that's something that we found that firms to be extremely helpful. And then again, for a different firm that uses, I don't know if you've heard of the software Documate. It's like a document automation platform with Dorna. Yeah, it's fantastic. I love that software. But there are some firms who use that and they want specific changes to the output documents once the documents are automated. So in those instances, we'll create a separate guidebook for those. Those are less extensive, probably anywhere between like 3 to 10 pages. So, we do really try to make it as personalized as possible per client so that they're as happy as possible. Because the success of Gig Law, it's on both sides. It's law students and law firms.
And, it's interesting because I don't want you to call anybody out by name, but I imagine a lot of your law firms are like, have a written process. That does sound like a pretty good idea to get this done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Writing things down, and it's funny because I know you mentioned with the person who was on last week about business processes and everything like that. That is the number one thing to for the success of law firms, businesses. If you have a process, write it down. That's the only way you'll have consistency. So that's something I learned definitely the hard way over the last 3-ish years. So it's been a good learning journey, but writing down processes and making sure you implement them are crucial.
Yeah, Ryan McKean, I'd like to say we're good friends. At the end of the day, I think he's brilliant, and we're at least colleagues. Knowledge has no
Yeah,
value in your head. Like that was a quote that he had in a presentation he gave like 4 years ago. And knowledge has no
that's
value in your head
brilliant.
has stayed in my mind. I don't know that I've written it down to be
Yeah.
fair, but I've taken that concept and written a bunch of other things down because then it allows,
Yeah,
it's in Tetra, it's in Google Docs, it's in the policy and procedure manual, whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
It's so much more helpful to everybody else than storing it up here.
Mhm. Oh, 100%. And that was the number one thing for me for delegating. It's that how did I expect other people to be able to do what I do without the step by step instructions? It can't just live in my head. And then I also find that Loom videos are incredible. I love Loom. It's just a quick showing of what you need and what changes you might need. And so that's been really helpful just to make short clips for both the students and like with law firms giving feedback sometimes they don't want to write down like hey, in an email all of the feedback they want to give. They just quickly show them video like, hey, need this to be changed, hey, this and this, and then we go through or the student goes through and like we'll implement the changes. So again, constant loops of communication are crucial.
I will say my one pro tip Loom feedback: make sure you are sharing the
Yeah,
right screen. I think
yeah.
like Google Meet, I think does the best about knowing like this is the tab or switch to this
Okay.
tab. Loom sometimes it gets a little sticky, and I've definitely sent feedback to people and then been like, "Wait a minute, hold
Oops.
on," and then, "All right, now I think we're on the right window. We'll go back.
Yeah,
Now this should all make
that
sense."
is very
Um,
true.
but yeah, so if you had the opportunity to talk to as many law firm owners as possible about delegation, have the written procedure,
Mhm.
have the communication loops, what other tips or tricks do you want to give to them when it comes to this, delegating for success?
I think so. Those two that you mentioned are the most important that feed into the other parts of delegating. And I think what goes into the core of delegation is trust and trusting that who you're sending it to, they're going to get you what you need. But if you don't get what you need, you have to communicate what was wrong in order to move forward and make the changes going forward. And I always say, we make a mistake once, it won't happen again, but you have to let us know what that mistake was. And so it goes into the communication and the feedback loop. But I think find people that you trust, find someone that you trust, and make sure that you're letting them know what you need. Everything's clear, and then and again, the way that we have our platform integrated, it's that we make sure we have all the information that we need from you in order to do it properly. And so I think that's been something like the way that we built our platform, it automatically creates that notion of trust. And then we also have like, reviews for the students that the people can do. So it's just making sure that you trust who you're sending it to, communicate to them what you need, communicate any changes that you need. So it's just making sure that that whole line is seamless.
Yeah, I think you may have sort of buried it in there. I think there is a genius point in there. Like mistakes are going to happen. The trick is not having the same mistake
Yeah.
over and over again. And I mean,
Yep.
look, that applies to everything. Like that applies to your law firm. That applies to your life. That
Absolutely.
applies across the board. But it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think most products they talk about or most services get worse over time. And here's a situation where it actually gets better over time because this specific student is learning that, underlining the last name, is learning that
Exactly.
tweak after document, is learning, what mistakes have been made, which makes it more and more
100%.
valuable because there should be fewer and fewer mistakes every time.
Exactly. And, I'm a perfectionist, 100% a type A perfectionist. And one of the things that I've had to learn is that not everything is going to be perfect. But when it's not perfect, as long as you know what's not perfect, that's how you can get it closer to perfect. So my perfectionism streak doesn't get lost. It's just a process to getting it to perfect. And that's what people need to understand.
So if we could wave a magic wand and boom, like what does gig law look like in 5 years? Like what is the I don't want to say success because I think success is a goal you
Yeah.
constantly fight for. But like, what does the future look like to gig law?
So the future for me, it's just a continuation of growth for the company of just having more and more law students on board, more and more law firms on board, just growing out this project-based legal intern work and making these connections and growing out the network of gig law so that law firms can trust, hey, go right out to gig law, find amazing law students to either outsource work to or maybe even find talent to bring on. And so it's like an expanded, extended version of something like Fiverr, but it's so niche because it's only for law students and law firms. And we have expanded to bring on a few paralegals, which are awesome. But I know there are bigger companies out there who have like virtual associates and virtual paralegals. So we're unique in that we mainly focus on that law student space. So the vision is to just grow it out as much as possible, keep bringing on different practice areas of law because we already have so many. And one of my favorite parts of gig law is that we're actually working in conjunction with companies like Documate with so law firms who understand where the legal space is going using legal tech, and they're using us to help implement that legal tech. So I personally love the legal tech space. I love being part of Documate and helping out clients automate their documents and things like that. So that's where I see it going. I just continuing to be part of the legal tech space and continuing to grow on both sides. So we'll see where we are in
Well,
5 years.
and it's interesting because, like, in essence, your law students over time will become lawyers, knock on wood,
Exactly.
and could
Yeah.
potentially go to switch over to the other side of the platform. So it's like it's interesting
Yeah.
because you're creating a larger client base, but obviously, I think also
Yep.
law students are more likely to help each other. Like, uh, most lawyers are not going to go to their biggest competitor down the street and say, "Hey, I found this great way to
Yeah.
get really good labor for a very affordable rate." Whereas
Yeah.
law students, I think, are more apt, like, it's in my study group. Like, hey, this is what I've been doing. This has been
Yeah.
awesome to add on some of these things. So I like it.
Exactly. I would say that 99% of the students on board came to us through referrals. So that's been awesome. And most of our clients are through referrals as well. So just spreading through word of mouth, which is amazing. And like, as you mentioned, we like law students turning into lawyers. We've actually had a few or law students who have passed the bar and now lawyers on board. And they're like, hey, I love this. Like, can I just be on board as a lawyer? And we're like, absolutely. And now if a client wants to work with them, it's just a slightly higher rate. So it's been exciting. And then we've also had one law student who's graduated and he's in the process of creating his own law firm. So I'm like, once you need law students, just let us know. So it's been a cool process.
I love it. I love that so much. All right. So as we get towards the end, is there, like, what else do you want to make sure that we cover? What have I missed here?
So I think I've emphasized everything that I wanted to, convey, but I think the number one thing that I tell people, anyone that I speak to, even lawyers who are looking, we've actually had a couple of law firm clients come on board who are like, "Hey, I'm really focused on general business law, but I want to focus more on estate planning. So help me make that adjustment by helping take stuff off my plate." And so I think if you're a lawyer looking just for any sort of help, just learn how to trust delegation. And I know as lawyers a lot of lawyers tend to be type A as well. It's really hard to delegate, but just trust the process and like trust your gut. Know that it's where law is going. A lot of virtual services exist, and just make sure you're trusting your gut in every sense of the word. And that goes to law students as well. That's my gut has been like my driving force in everything. And I'm a big proponent of trusting it.
Yeah, I always go back to, like, that age-old saying: if somebody else can do it 80% as well, delegate it. And then a
Yep.
good friend, Jim Hacking, had the wonderful idea. It was like, you can still make it 100% as well, but if everybody else has
Yeah.
it to the 80% level, you can do like 5 times as much work, or touch
Yep.
5 times as many cases to get it to the 100%. And so I'm cognizant of, we're not saying to sacrifice it, but there are things that are the
Right.
first draft, at least, or the beginning draft, is not the best use of your time as the lawyer.
Exactly. And that still take like even the first draft can take a couple of hours. So the couple hours that you spend that you would have spent on that when you delegate it out could be spent doing better things, better use of your time. So delegation is key. It's something that took me a long time to learn and understand, but once I did, like everything has changed in such a great way.
Awesome. All right, so I want to talk about our next episode, then we'll come back for that final takeaway from you, Hayley. Our next episode is going to be on April 25th, the perfect day according to Miss Congeniality. Not too cold, not too hot, cardigan weather, aka my wife's birthday, which is how I know that it is the perfect date at 2 p.m. So 4/25, April 25th at 2 p.m. We're gonna have Anna Skumal on. Anna's gonna talk to us about putting the horse before the cart, how to protect your brand to provide more value online. So Anna's gonna talk to it from the trademark perspective, but then also from her own journey, how she's been able to grow her firm through a lot of providing a lot of value online, a lot of content creation, etc. So I hope you'll join us for that next week, the 25th at 2 p.m. for a wonderful chat. But Hayley, I'm not going to let you go without
Okay.
that final nugget of wisdom. So it can be something you've already shared. It can be repeating something. It can be something totally different. But if somebody's been listening for the last 35 minutes and they remember absolutely nothing except for this, what's that biggest piece of wisdom, that biggest takeaway to help other lawyers
Mhm.
be the exhibit A of a successful attorney?
So I was just touching upon that on my last point, but something that if I didn't do, I wouldn't be here right now. Again, is just trusting my gut. If I went to the entertainment firm, or if I just went on the corporate law route when I immediately entered law school, I wouldn't have created Gig Law. I wouldn't have had the freedom that I do as being a business owner and a CEO. And so I think in your instincts what the right choices are, not only for your personal life, but for your business life, for your law firm. And just trust that. Just keep moving forward and learn from your mistakes. For me, that's the only way that I've grown this company to what it is because I've made so many mistakes. So that's the only way you grow. That's the only way you understand what the right thing to do is, by doing the wrong thing. And so sometimes you don't know you're making a mistake, but just if you do, learn from it and move forward. And that's the best piece of advice I wish I had heard 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and I'm really glad that I'm living by it now.
There you go. I love that so much. And there is nothing better than whatever metrics you are tracking supporting what your gut
Mhm.
feels. Or there's nothing better than being able to look back, 2, 3 years down the road
Yep.
that your gut was 100% correct. But I feel like so many lawyers swim upstream. You're like, oh, this
Yeah.
won't look cool. This isn't why I went to law school, even though I'm miserable. This isn't why I did this. And so I
Right.
love that commitment to following your gut. Awesome.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much again for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for being here. So for people that want to get on Gigolo, that want to hire people off Gigolo, what's the best way for them to go? I know we've dropped the links on Facebook, but
Yeah.
for anybody listening on the podcast, where should they go?
You can just go to my website, giglaw.co. It's .co, not .com. And you can either schedule a time to chat with me, or you can just sign up and I'll approve your law firm profile. And you can get started on posting. But other than that, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, so you can find me in all of those places. But my favorite thing is conversing with lawyers who understand the value of gig law. So schedule a time with me on my Calendly, and we'll talk soon.
And for those of you who want to look Hayley up on LinkedIn, Hayley Leviashvili, Leviashvili. Did I do it right again?
You got it perfect. I'm very
All
impressed.
right. There we go. I'll never get it right again. I'm sorry, but I got it now. No, but seriously,
All
thank
right.
you so much for coming on here. Thank you to everybody who's listening and watching. Hope to see you all back on Thursday. We'll do our 7 steps to a primal branding webinar. For that, it is free, but you do have to be in our Solutions for Lawyers by Lawyers Facebook group. And then obviously, if you've got follow-up questions, a ton of our guests are in that group as well to go ahead and answer those questions. So hope to see you back there on Thursday and then next week for Anna's presentation. With that, have a wonderful week, everybody, and happy Passover, happy Easter, happy Ramadan, whatever you have going on while everything has overlapped for a little bit. Wishing you the best. And for people that celebrate nothing, also have a great week.